Alive is absolutely fantastic. I loved every second of this. This will be non-spoiler for the most part, but there is one aspect I want to talk a little bit about, and it is a big, big spoiler, by which I mean it's the end of the film. So at the very end, I will give a spoiler warning. But otherwise, this is spoiler-free because I thoroughly recommend this. This was released in 2018. It's directed by Rob Grant, and it's written by Chuck McCue and Jules Vincent, and we have a cast including Thomas Cocquerel, Camille Stops, and Angus Macfadyen, and I apologise if I've mispronounced any of those names. And on IMDb, the characters are just referred to as male patient, female patient, and the man. The man is referred to in the film as the caretaker, so that's what I'll be referring to him as throughout this discussion. And immediately we get to the point straight away. The male patient wakes up in this seemingly hospital bed, hospital room, and then we also meet the female patient. Neither of them know who they are. Neither of them recognize each other. They don't know their names. They don't know why they're there. They don't know if they even know each other or if they're otherwise complete strangers. We also don't know what's wrong with them or what's happened. Have they been in an accident? Who knows? Well, this caretaker begins to look after them, but it's very clear that he's not necessarily looking after them. There's definitely something very sinister going on. Who is this character? Is he responsible for why the male and female patients are there? I'm obviously not going to give away any of those answers because that's what the film is about. And the film is also about trying to identify our patients and trying to work out who they are and why they're there and just how much danger they may or may not be in. Will they escape? Will they find out who they are? I'm not going to give away any of that information. I loved it. I absolutely adored it. There are a couple of key reasons why I really loved this. First of all, just the atmosphere from the beginning. It was terrifying. Even when nothing was happening. Even when we just had scenes where our protagonists are just lying in their hospital beds talking with each other or trying to work out what's going on. Even though there's nothing that dramatic happening, it always just felt so eerie because it was never clear what was going to happen next. And I absolutely loved it. The other reason I love it is the hospital setting. I love hospital-based or medical-based horrors when they're done right. And this one certainly is done right. The other reason it works well is because of the performances. The performances are absolutely fantastic. They are so, so brilliant. And everything about this worked well. The pacing of the narrative was great. The use of the space, the hospital space, absolutely brilliant. Visually stunning. The lighting was great. We do have quite dim lighting, which ordinarily I don't love, but it works really well. And whenever we do get periods of brighter lighting, it's almost eerie because it's unexpected. And it's so effective. I honestly can't fault it. I thought Alive was a fabulous film and I thoroughly, thoroughly recommend it. I will now, with a huge, huge spoiler warning, talk about what happens at the very, very end. So big, big spoilers from now as I talk about the last couple of minutes. At the end of the film, our patients do manage to escape. And they're in a proper hospital being treated for their injuries. Injuries is a very light way of putting it. And obviously the police are involved and they've run their fingerprints to try and help identify them. And they're told that there are problems with their fingerprints and they talk to them in separate rooms. And my thought was they're criminals. They were being punished. Whoever the caretaker was had captured them to punish them for their crimes. That was my initial thought. And that's not what happened. It unfolds that they're actually made of different body parts. And it's a very Frankenstein's creature kind of setup. And I did not see it coming. And I absolutely loved it. I will say, though, for me personally, once we learned that, it instantly became not scary. And this is purely based on personal belief. As much as I love Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, absolutely love it, I don't really like contemporary interpretations because as a spiritualist, I'm very much of the belief that it wouldn't work. A person couldn't put together different body parts and bring somebody back to life, not because the science doesn't make sense, but because as a spiritualist, it is my belief that they wouldn't have a spirit, so they couldn't move and act and think like a human. At the very most, even if the science worked and you could bring back somebody to life based on body parts, for me it would be like, yeah, maybe the muscles would move, maybe the internal organs would start working, but they wouldn't have a spirit. so they wouldn't be a person. So as soon as that was revealed, it stopped being a believable horror. Everything up until that point could be realistic. It could happen to somebody. But once we found out what had actually happened, for me, it stopped being scary because it stopped being possible. But the reveal was so powerful and for me, so unexpected that I still absolutely adored it. There are a few things that don't make sense. For example, they brought in this child whose mother had died when she was, I think, 4 years old. And they brought the child in, I guess, to tell the woman who thought she was her mother that she can't be her mother because her mother died. That wouldn't happen. That would be traumatizing for that child. That wouldn't happen at all. So you maybe need to suspend disbelief a teeny tiny bit. But other than that, I thought that Alive was an absolutely perfect film. And I'm actually really glad that we didn't know it was Frankensteinian until right at the end. Because as I said, for me, that's not scary. I don't find contemporary Frankenstein-based films to be scary because with my personal beliefs, I don't believe it's possible. Again, maybe the science could work and you could rejuvenate the muscles and kickstart the internal organs by piecing together bits of different bodies. I don't know if it would ever work, but certainly physically, maybe I could believe it. But the horror aspect of actually bringing somebody to life because they wouldn't have a spirit it doesn't scare me because I don't believe it. So I'm really glad that we actually didn't find out until the last couple of seconds. And because of the shock factor of the reveal, I still thoroughly enjoyed, well, everything that came after it, which basically was the end credits. So I had a lot of fun. I thought Alive was a fabulous film, very intense, very, very well executed narrative. And needless to say, I definitely recommend it.